The sky is heavy with storm clouds, the air thick with anticipation. A lone figure stands at the edge of a vast desert, the wind whipping around them as if the elements themselves recognize the weight of this moment. Have you ever felt like the world is pressing down on your very soul? Like the battles you face are designed to break you, to test your faith, and leave you questioning your purpose? You are not alone. This message is for those who have been called, chosen, and set apart. This is your moment, your divine appointment with destiny. The wilderness stretches endlessly, its golden sands shimmering under the harsh sun. Sparse, wind-bent trees stand as silent witnesses to the passage of time. The air carries a haunting stillness, broken only by the occasional gust of wind. A group of travelers appears on the horizon, their shadows stretching long against the desolation. Each step they take seems labored, as if the weight of the journey bears down on their very souls. This is the wilderness, a place of trials, where comfort is scarce and faith is forged. For many, it feels like the end. But look closer. The wilderness is not a punishment. It's a stage for transformation. The Israelites wandered here for 40 years, not to be lost, but to be found, to be refined, to learn reliance on God's provision and trust in His timing. Here, every step was a lesson, every challenge a preparation for the promised land. The camera lingers on the faces of the travelers. There is exhaustion in their eyes, but also a flicker of hope, a determination that refuses to be extinguished. A young woman pauses to adjust the straps of a heavy pack on her back, her lips murmuring a quiet prayer. Nearby, a man shields his child from the sun, using his own tattered cloak as shade. Perhaps you find yourself here, in your own wilderness. It feels barren, lonely, and unending. The world may seem to mock your struggles, whispering that you've been abandoned. But hear this: the wilderness is not where you are forgotten. It's where you are shaped. Just as the Israelites found manna from heaven and water from the rock, so too will you find God's hand guiding and sustaining you. His presence is closer than you realize, even in this desolation. The camera pans to the horizon, where a distant mountain rises like a silent sentinel. A small group gathers at its base, their voices rising in song, blending with the wind. The melody is raw and imperfect, but it carries a defiant hope. In the wilderness, God's voice becomes clearer. The distractions of the world fade, leaving space for His whispers to echo in your heart. Here, you learn to lean not on your own understanding, but on the one who holds the universe. The wilderness is not a place of despair, it's the proving ground of your faith. The Israelites didn't walk into the promised land untested. They were prepared, strengthened, and refined for the blessing that awaited them. A sudden gust of wind sweeps through, scattering sand into the air. The travelers pause, shielding their faces, but they don't stop. The camera focuses on a young boy holding tightly to the hand of an elder, his small steps mirroring the determined strides of his guide. Every step you take, no matter how heavy, is a step closer to your breakthrough. The wilderness isn't just a place of survival, it's a place of transformation. It strips away the unnecessary, burns away the doubts, and leaves only what is essential. It's here, in the struggle, that you discover who you truly are, and more importantly, who God has called you to be. The scene transitions to dusk, the sun sinking below the horizon, casting the wilderness in hues of orange and purple. Fires begin to dot the landscape as the travelers set up camp. Their voices carry over the stillness, sharing stories of endurance, courage, and faith. The wilderness is a story that unfolds one step at a time. It's a story of struggle, yes, but also of hope, resilience, and the unshakable promise of God. You are not here by accident. The wilderness is not your end, it's the beginning of something greater. The same God who led the Israelites by a pillar of cloud and fire walks with you now. Trust Him. Your promised land is ahead. The camera slowly fades out, leaving the glow of the campfires against the endless night, their light a symbol of enduring faith. The scene fades into a dimly lit prison cell, the cold stone walls enclosing a figure hunched in the shadows. Chains clink softly as Joseph lifts his head, his eyes piercing through the darkness. Despite the confines of his cell, there's a quiet strength in his gaze, a resilience that defies his circumstances. Joseph, betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, and now imprisoned for a crime he did not commit. His journey is one of unimaginable pain, rejection, and loss. Yet, even in the depths of his despair, Joseph held on to the promise of God. He knew that his story was far from over, that his suffering was not the final chapter. The camera shifts to a flashback. Joseph as a young man, his dreams filled with vivid imagery of stars, sheaves, and a future filled with purpose. His face lights up as he shares his dreams with his brothers, only for their expressions to darken with jealousy. The scene cuts abruptly to the pit where he is thrown, his cries echoing as his brothers walk away, leaving him to his fate. From the pit to slavery, from slavery to the prison, Joseph's life seemed to spiral further into hopelessness. The very dreams that once brought him joy now seemed like a cruel mockery of his reality. But God's plans are not hindered by human betrayal or circumstances. In every step, Joseph's faith was being refined, his character molded for the role that awaited him. The scene transitions back to the prison. Joseph kneels, his lips moving in silent prayer. The faint light streaming through the barred window illuminates his face, revealing tears of both sorrow and hope. The sound of heavy footsteps grows louder, and a guard appears at the cell door. The prison was not Joseph's end. It was the gateway to his destiny. When Pharaoh's dreams needed interpretation, it was Joseph who was called. His years of suffering had not been in vain. They were preparing him to step into the role that God had ordained for him. The camera cuts to Joseph standing before Pharaoh, his demeanor calm and confident. As he interprets Pharaoh's dreams, his words carry the authority of someone who has walked through fire and emerged unscathed. Pharaoh's expression shifts from curiosity to awe, and he declares Joseph second in command over all of Egypt. What the enemy meant for harm, God turned into good. Joseph's rise to power was not by accident, but by divine design. His journey from the pit to the palace was orchestrated to save not only his life, but the lives of countless others. The pain he endured became the foundation of his purpose. The scene transitions to Joseph standing on a balcony overlooking Egypt's abundance during the years of prosperity. The camera pans to his brothers kneeling before him, their faces filled with fear and regret. Joseph's voice, steady and filled with compassion, breaks the tension. "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." As Joseph embraces his brothers, the camera focuses on his face, no longer burdened by the weight of betrayal, but radiant with forgiveness and understanding. Joseph's story is a testament to the power of perseverance, faith, and God's unshakable promises. The pit was not his destination. The prison was not his end. Every trial he faced was a stepping stone to the purpose God had for him. And the same God who elevated Joseph is working in your life, turning your struggles into a setup for your elevation. The scene fades to Joseph standing alone in the palace, looking up at the heavens. His lips move in silent gratitude, his journey a reflection of divine providence. The scene opens in a small, dimly lit room. A woman sits alone, her face pale and lined with years of suffering. The faint sound of bustling streets filters through the window. She glances toward the door, her eyes filled with a mixture of desperation and determination. For 12 long years, she had endured relentless pain, a condition that had drained her of everything she had. Her wealth, her strength, her hope, all gone. Doctors had failed her, and society had cast her aside. Yet something inside her refused to give up. She had heard whispers of a man, a healer, someone who could make the impossible possible. The camera shifts to the crowded streets outside. A mass of people surrounds Jesus as he walks through the town. The woman steps into the chaos, her frail frame struggling against the tide of the crowd. Her hand trembles as she grips the edge of her shawl, her breathing shallow but resolute. Her heart raced as she pushed through the throng. Each step was a battle, each movement a test of her will. She didn't need his attention, his words, or his approval. She needed only to touch him, to grasp even the hem of his garment. In that touch, she believed, lay the power to change everything. The camera slows as she stretches out her hand, her fingers brushing against the edge of Jesus's cloak. In that moment, the chaos around her fades into silence. The colors brighten, and the light around her seems to glow. She gasps, clutching her chest as a wave of healing surges through her body. And just like that, the suffering of 12 years vanished. The pain, the hopelessness, the isolation, it was all gone. In that single act of faith, she found the miracle she had longed for. She didn't need the crowd's approval or the world's validation. Her faith was enough to unlock her breakthrough. The camera shifts to Jesus, who stops suddenly and turns to the crowd. His voice is calm yet commanding. "Who touched me?" The disciples exchange confused glances, pointing to the multitude around them, but Jesus' gaze remains steady, scanning the faces until his eyes meet hers. Trembling, the woman steps forward and falls at his feet, tears streaming down her face. She could have hidden in the crowd, but instead she chose to step into the light. In that moment, she not only received healing for her body, but restoration for her spirit. Jesus looked at her, not with judgment, but with compassion, and spoke the words that would forever change her life. "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." The scene transitions to the woman walking through the streets, her posture now upright, her face radiant with joy. The same people who once avoided her now part respectfully, their eyes filled with awe. Her story is a testament to the power of faith. She didn't wait for an invitation, for circumstances to align, or for someone else to lead the way. She pressed forward, determined to claim what she knew was hers. And in that determination, she found her miracle. The camera cuts to the bustling crowd fading into the distance, the woman's silhouette standing tall against the horizon. Like the woman with the issue of blood, your breakthrough may be just one step away. The crowd may try to block you, the noise may try to drown you out, but your faith is the key. Reach out, push through, and believe, because what you seek is closer than you think. The screen fades to black, leaving only the sound of her steady footsteps, each one a reminder of the power of unwavering faith. The scene opens on a barren mountaintop, the air heavy with tension. The sky above is a dull grey, the clouds swirling ominously. A lone figure stands at the summit, Elijah, his cloak whipping in the wind. He gazes out over the landscape, his face a mixture of exhaustion and unshakable resolve. For 3.5 years, the land had suffered under a relentless drought. Crops had withered, rivers had run dry, and hope had nearly vanished. But Elijah, the prophet of God, stood firm in his faith. Though the heavens remained closed, he knew that rain was coming, because God had promised it. The camera shifts to Elijah kneeling on the ground, his head bowed low between his knees. His voice is barely audible over the rising wind as he prays. Nearby, his servant watches, his expression a mix of doubt and anticipation. Elijah's prayer was not a casual request. It was a battle, a declaration of faith against the impossible. He didn't pray once and walk away. He prayed again and again, each time sending his servant to look toward the sea for any sign of rain. The camera follows the servant as he descends the rocky slope and scans the horizon. The vast expanse of water stretches out before him, still and empty. He shakes his head and climbs back up, his voice hesitant as he delivers the news. There is nothing. Most would have given up after the first report, or the second, or even the sixth, but Elijah's faith was unshaken. He sent the servant back each time, refusing to believe that God's promise would fail, because Elijah understood a truth that so many forget. God's timing is perfect, even when it seems delayed. The scene repeats several times, the servant descending, scanning and returning with the same answer. There is nothing. Each time Elijah remains steadfast, his lips moving in silent prayer. On the seventh journey, the servant pauses, his eyes narrowing as he spots something on the horizon, a tiny cloud, no larger than a man's hand, rising from the sea. That small cloud may have seemed insignificant, a mere speck against the vast sky, but to Elijah it was everything. It was the sign he had been waiting for, proof that God's promise was unfolding. The drought was about to end, and the rain was coming. The camera cuts back to Elijah, now standing tall, his face illuminated with renewed energy. He turns to the servant and speaks with unwavering authority. "Go and tell Ahab, hitch up your chariot and go down before the rain stops you." The camera shifts to the horizon as the small cloud begins to grow, darkening the sky. Lightning flashes, and the distant sound of thunder rumbles through the air. The rain begins as a light drizzle, then quickly transforms into a torrential downpour. Streams of water carve paths through the dry, cracked earth, reviving the land. Elijah's persistence in prayer brought forth a miracle. What began as a small, seemingly insignificant cloud became a mighty storm that ended a years-long drought. The same God who answered Elijah's prayers is ready to answer yours. But will you persist when the sky looks empty? Will you hold on when the answer seems delayed? The scene transitions to Elijah running ahead of Ahab's chariot, the rain pouring down around him. His steps are swift and sure, his strength seemingly supernatural. This story is a reminder that even when nothing seems to be happening, God is working. The silence before the breakthrough is not a sign of defeat. It's a test of faith. Keep praying, keep believing. Because just like Elijah, your persistence will bring the rain. The screen fades as the sound of the rain grows louder, a symbol of renewal, restoration, and the fulfillment of God's promises. Elijah's silhouette disappears into the storm, a testament to the power of unwavering faith. The screen fades to a serene sunrise, the storm having passed. The narrator's voice softens, yet remains firm and resolute. You are chosen, called, and anointed for such a time as this. The battles you face are not here to break you, but to build you. God's promise is greater than your struggle, and His plans for you are beyond anything you can imagine. Rise up, chosen one. Step into your purpose with faith, for the victory is already yours. This is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of something extraordinary.